I think the stitching found me. This was something that I never imagined myself doing. It's like I haven't got time to hand stitch. That was my thinking. There's so many other ways in which I had wanted to express my creativity, and stitching and all the beading work that you can now see in some of my work, all the detail stuff, it was just like, I haven't got time for that. And so I say it found me because one day I had just decided to, I think it was when I was making my first fabric wall hangings. One of the things I really like about doing these wall hangings, and I've just made some, these are the largest ones I've done so far, but I decided to go big because of the effect that you get. Yeah, obviously if you're kind of using a lot of small beads, it's going to take a lot longer for you to complete the piece of work, but I guess I feel it's worth it. The amount of work it takes, the end result that you get, I think it's definitely worth it. It's such a beautiful thing when you see it, the finished piece hanging up. It's about expression, and something that I have to keep reminding myself is that, you know, when I'm specifically when I'm, you know, painting like a scene or that it's about my expression, my story. It's not about what other people expect to see. And so I started to look at the fabric in a different way, in that it was going to be a way in which I could express myself, and all I needed to do was to listen to how I felt, and that was important. How do I feel about this piece? Not whether I liked it, that doesn't come into play. I see, in the same way I see the paint and adding backgrounds, that's the same way I see this process. So the stitches, the colours that are used are almost like paint in themselves, and I just need to follow my intuitive spirit that might say, okay, that's enough of that, or it's still not feeling quite right, it needs something. And then I might immediately think about the thing that's needed, like in this particular piece that I'm doing, I had thought it was finished, and I've added the wall hanging bit, and I've done the bit on the back with my name and details, and I thought it was finished. And when I took it out, it was saying, no, we need something that's in one of those containers. And in my containers I keep all my kind of like pieces to add on to the fabric, so pieces of jewellery, beading, and a whole load of other things. And yeah, what I was feeling was that it needed some sort of leaf. So the garden for me is really important, but it needed some sort of leaf, and some other bits that I've added since. And it also felt that it needed additional stitching, and so that's what I'm doing here. And with every stitch, it feels more complete. The fabric goes through a variety of different stages, and once it's been initially painted, they're pieced together. So these pieces, what I've done is create images. So some have images, and the ones in this particular they're all in different containers. These are ones that are to be stitched. So this one has gone through the process of, it's been painted, an image has been painted on their face, and it's been stitched, and it now needs to go to the next stage where there are additional pieces that may be put on. I allow myself to be inspired, so I don't say to myself, okay, right, this piece now, you know, I need to add the back in. I wait and see whether I'm going to be adding beadings, or I might have additional pieces of material that have been brought together that need to be added to this. So I allow this to kind of sit and wait. So among some of the other pieces, loose images are painted on the fabric. This has been gessoed, and a loose image has been painted, and it's gone into the box of to be stitched. So this has got some stitching on already, so I'm deciding whether it needs additional stitching. So all of these have gone through some sort of, they've had loose stitching on them, and you can see that on the back, and I wait to see what image development now needs to take place. So this is an example of one that I've created. I've painted on the fabric, I've stenciled as well, and it now needs to have its initial stitching around the figure that I've got here. It looks like a mother and child. You can see some of the arms, but again, as I say, I allow inspiration to come. And so this one, you can see the stitching on the back, and that's even a nice part of the process as well, to see how the piece develops. So as well as creating figures and images, I also do abstract pieces. So the abstract pieces can be quite a lot of fun as well, because you get to bring together a wide, you know, a range of different materials, and then you can arrange them as you want. You can, the vibrancy of the materials is also lovely, but again, I allow myself to be inspired to add whatever pieces need to be added, and I sit with it. I don't rush into it, I take my time. And some of the pieces are in a more advanced stage. So these are the pieces that are in the pile that have been stitched, and now these are smaller pieces that have been painted, and they've had hand stitching on, and they're on the first stage of the backing. Now, I don't traditionally quilt, but I would put them on a backing piece of material like this, but then what I also do is go in and add additional stitching, so to add to bring these pieces into the piece of material that they're on. And again, they may have additional elements that are placed on. So sometimes what I do is I gather some of the scraps and put them together, and then they can become focal pieces as well that might then go into the main piece. I've taken lots of smaller pieces and brought them together, and then I create the larger piece. So I also have a box that is a collection of pieces that have gone through the machine stitch, and they're now waiting to be hand stitched, and they vary in terms of the design. And what I like to do is sometimes I will just work on putting pieces of material together for the time when they're going to be stitched together. So these are African fabrics that I brought and put together, and you know, I mix the two, so hand painted fabric with African fabric, and then these have been machine stitched and now awaiting to be hand stitched. So this is a nice activity where you're again gathering the fabrics, putting them together, and that's all part of the meditative process. There is no, it all has to be done now. You can do them in stages, and that's what I do. And I also bring in some of the other elements like the ribbons, and this one has had some beading on, but it's gone back in the to be hand stitched because there's other smaller stitches that I'd like to incorporate on here. And I've also added some sculptural elements, some metal that's been stitched, and that's again all part of the process, spending time finding the pieces that want to be together. And I don't force them together. I just allow them to sit for a while, and they almost find each other. You know, if you spend time allowing yourself to explore, then the pieces find each other, and then when you put them together, they just work. So the next stage for some of the pieces are to have additional stitching. This has been batiqued, and then I've gone in and added additional stitching, and then the next stage for this piece would be to have beading added, and I'm exploring ribbons, different types of ribbons, and it's got to then have its backing. This is one that I've been working on as well, so I've added some additional hand stitching. I've gone in with lots of smaller stitching, and it's yeah, it's lovely to work on. So I don't restrict myself. I leave the needles in there so that I can just go in and start on this particular piece when I'm ready. Go with how I feel that I want to work on a piece, and I just allow myself to do that. So if I'm feeling I want to work with beads, or I want to work with a particular colour, then I would just go ahead. I've got the pieces, and I might then see a particular one right to the end. But if it's nearing like completion, like this one is, and I'm thinking, okay, it's got everything that I feel it needs to have, and actually, yeah, that's the way it should go. And all I've got to do now is these particular embellishments that I've put on is again to add them, to stitch them, and add some additional stitching up here, and then add a backing, and decide on maybe some sculptural elements that need to go on, or the wood that I may incorporate. Actually, that looks quite good. This is moringa wood, and I would have spent a session create designs on the moringa wood. So this particular piece was painted fabric, and I've spent time going in with more stitching, and the stitching process is a really calming, therapeutic process, and that's something that really, it's inspiring, because you can be thinking of so many things, working out, putting the world to rights in your mind. So here are some additional pieces. So I work in the smaller pieces. So this particular one looks like it's nearly finished, but it needs some, what I felt was coming from it, whilst it's quite busy, it needs some hanging beads here as well. So this is a larger piece that again is one that is nearing completion. So there's an amazing amount of detail on here that and these were all individual pieces that were brought together. So there has to be some additional stitching around the edges, and then it's got to be placed on another piece. But yeah, I love the way they come together. So here is one of the faces, the fabric pieces that then have additional, that has faces applied, painted, and then it is stitched. So these two pieces, and then additional beading is placed on here. And again, part of the meditative process, finding the beads, picking out the beads, and selecting them, and then adding them to the piece. You have to take your time. So I used elements of the stitching, and then I pieced together all of these fabrics have been worn, and there's a history within that. Even if it's my own or family or whoever's worn the pieces of material. And then I've used dyeing techniques and painting on fabric. Now the thing for me that is really most important is the wood that I've taken. So the wood comes from cotton that I've grown in my garden and moringa trees. So at the bottom here we have the wood from the moringa trees, and I have wood burned and then applied other elements to them. But the cotton, also done some wood burning on that, and we know what the history of cotton is, and it's bringing all of these together and how the richness of our heritage prior to being enslaved and brought. In this piece kind of speaks to me. It's about strength, it's about we've got elements of sculpture here that was wrapped in cloth and wrapped in rope, and then it's got metal on it as well. And it's again just how all of these elements come together and tell a story and have a meaning, and it means a lot to me to be able to combine these elements together, whereas at first as a mixed media artist, I love bringing together different elements and expressing myself in this way. So it was a piece of work that, because I'm a self-taught artist, I was able to not only be able to follow the rules, but break the rules and make it up as I went along, and show a bit of the things that I wanted to bring out into the work. So I was really pleased with this. It's like a meditative piece as well, because of the time it took to do each individual stitch and put them all together, and then also the wood burning elements, and then arranging them as sculptural pieces on the overall wall hanging. So this was a really special piece for me, because it stretched me and it made me come out of my comfort zone, but then also make it my own.